And by the way, where I was at the Wilmington Institute Free Library. That was November 3rd, 4th,
Yeah.
and November 3rd. And it was a debate. The subject matter was supposed to
Well, you were
be,
debating Michael Eric Dyson, which was
yes, you
that
were
was a good
there.
debate. Yeah, I have it up on the YouTube.
If you call that a debate, and the thing of it is the subject matter or the event was to motivate young black men to become engaged with their community and do something about the circumstances. And his position was black men are a failure. Get out of the way and let women do it. So
Oh yeah,
that
he
was
did
kind
say that.
of strange.
Yeah.
That was kind of strange.
Very. But it wasn't strange because we know who he's aligned with.
Yeah.
So they have those same talking points.
Yes.
I wanna go to Memphis, and the reason why I want to go to Memphis, and this is a perfect time to let people know, Judge Joe Brown is running for mayor of Memphis, Tennessee. Please support him. Go to his website, jjb2023.com. Sign up, donate. You can also donate to his Cash App. That's $ Judge Joe Brown 2023. $Judge Joe Brown 2023, Cash App, $Judge Joe Brown 2023. So it's very important that even though you don't live in Memphis, that you financially support him. And if you do live in Memphis, reach out to the campaign and volunteer your services, and vote for Judge Joe Brown for mayor of Memphis. So, and I always want to do these Twitter space, including Memphis news. And I would like for you to speak on it, Judge. So it says Memphis City Councilman proposes $30 million for public safety, including pay increase for police, even if it raises taxes, right? And this is, you talk about the city council. The mayor sits in on these councils too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let me tell you about these jackasses. $30 million is not unreasonable for the purpose, but they've committed $220 million to a major hotel chain to improve its downtown hotel. Meanwhile, they are approving a resolution to further restrict downtown parking to just residents. They are also trying to gentrify downtown. They gave away 25 acres in the middle of downtown for just 600,000 to a developer and committed another $250 million, that's another 220 million, to setting up 28 luxury units in that 25-acre area and some boutique shops with restricted admission and shopping privileges. They've committed $700 million to converting a football stadium to a soccer arena and another $500 million to starting the construction of a replacement football stadium. Meanwhile, they're talking about 30 million on a pathetic expense to a police department that is bereft of command authority, incompetently staffed, and in drastic need of reform. So, what the devil are they doing? Incidentally, they committed 5 million to the study of reparations. Now, considering that the city council is 70% black and they claim to know something about blackness, why is it they need a study? Don't they have any ideas already? And what they're doing with that 5 million is unfortunately just creating a pot that it will be easy to dip into and steal from. So the people again will get nothing out of this other than getting ripped off. That's the name of the game here. This is the most corruptly managed city in the United States of America. There's more theft, embezzlement, and downright fraud than you could imagine.
Out of that 30 million that the city council wants to pass, 15 million to increase starting pay for Memphis Police Department officers.
Well, the problem with that is right now they've got quite a few paid for and unfilled positions that they don't know how to fill.
Right.
So
Five.
where is this? So in other words, if you can't hire the people that you've already paid for, where are the people going to come from for adding a little bit extra? See, 30 million, you have to understand there's training, ammunition, resources, all sorts of things. So you're not really talking about that many extra people.
Right.
And right now, one of the things that they want to deal with it for is a so called apprenticeship program where you hire 18-year-olds right out of high school with no college training, which is important because probably the most influential thing that cops do is write reports that travel along with a case from the very beginning all the way to the top, all the way to the appellate level. And one of the most troublesome things is when you get a cop that does not know how to write. So you're going to take 18-year-olds who've had no college level English,
Formal
don't
education.
write
Yeah,
anything.
a good formal education.
Yeah, and
So
wait a minute. They cannot carry pistols under Tennessee law until they get 21. So from 18 to 21, they're supposed to ride around, and a ordinary full service cop is supposed to babysit them, and they get on the job training. Well, one of the problems that led to some of the recent negative PR that the police department got is because they've assigned force on force training and use of force to the squad car rather than the classroom, which does not work.
um so 15 million on our 30 to increase police officers pay, but only 5 million to go to Memphis Transit Authority, another 5 for youth programs such as libraries and parks, and 5 million for city affordable housing. But the most important thing here is youth programs and affordable housing, and they're getting the least amount.
Yeah,
So
that's typical Memphis. And the other thing is, too, and one of the rackets is they had a land bank that had properties that were confiscated by the city because of unpaid taxes and abandonment. And instead of it being used as a community developmental tool, a community take back mechanism, what's happening is they are quietly selling this stuff off at ridiculously low rates to individuals that are friends, and those people are acquiring the properties. And then get this, after the city already owned the property rights, it's renting the properties back from the people who bought them
right.
for more money than the people paid for. And of course, a lot of that's going under the table.
Um, Also, I just want to a couple more things I want to bring up with Memphis police lieutenant who was on the scene of the Tyree Nichols violent beating retired with all benefits. So it seemed like there's like no accountability going on within this police
It
department.
wasn't police work that you looked at, it was personal. The victim was specifically targeted by a number of officers for things that had to do with man woman relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Classic old time stuff. Arguably, that means the police department isn't even responsible because technically what those officers did was so far outside of the line that
Right.
you couldn't even consider it police work. In other words, if somebody was riding around in a squad car and this guy got the sudden idea, okay, my wife has been cheating on me. I've had all of this, I'm going to stand. And she just sat there and she withdrew all of the money from our joint checking account and gave it to this guy. Well, if he says what the hell, turns his squad car around, goes back to his home, walks in and shoots his wife to death, are the police responsible for that? That has nothing to do with police misconduct. That's just an individual who happens to be a cop.
And one last thing, you, and I sent you this, you were at a mayor candidate forum, and the press was there, and basically you and another person running for mayor said that you would not want to keep the current chief of police on, um, and I think I wouldn't either.
Oh, yeah. Well, let me tell you why. First off, she has been incompetent in the years she's been here and exercising command authority. The morale is zero. Nobody's in charge. Why did we bring her here? She's the first civil service chief in 41 years. Prior to that, we had civilians who were subject to the removal of the mayor for refusing to deal with policy so the people could control the police. This woman was demoted and then fired in Atlanta. She was still civil service, so they hired her back. She went down to Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, and she was under investigation for the same thing. What was she under investigation for? Why did she get fired in Atlanta? Because she was protecting some people who are doing time in the federal penitentiary now for manufacturing and distribution of child pornography. One of the specific people she protected is serving a 10-year federal sentence for that. One of them was busted for having sex on camera with a 14-year-old, a 15, and a 16-year-old. Now, that's what she got fired for.
Right.
We hired her, and then she hadn't been here 2 weeks. She got a gun stolen, and the word is out that several weeks later it turned up in a crime.
So right now, Memphis Police Department is saying that averages 5.5 auto theft arrests per day. They have 35 specialized units, and they're wanting to put more money in the police department by raising their salaries. So I don't think there's any type of accountability with the police department, and I think it needs to be a complete overhaul.
Let me say this.
And then I want to go to Mr. Engagement. Then
you may not realize it, but Chief we talked to.
Yes.
He was commander of the Blue Crush unit. He retired because he couldn't get backup for his command authority. The Blue Crush unit was created 3 years ago at citizen demand to stop crime. The Blue Crush unit was changed by edict a year ago to the Scorpion unit. The last director of that same unit retired early because he couldn't get any backup for his command authority. So the initial commander of the unit for 2 years before they changed the name, and you've talked to him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the problems, which is nobody is allowed to be in charge and exercise command authority. So what you had was a unit where the members ranged from 22 years old to 32 years old. And the youngest one involved in this mess with so-called Tyree Nichols was 23 years old, and the oldest was 32. And also, there's a bit of hypocrisy here. The allegations are interesting. The family members that are raising so much hell put Tyree Nichols up for adoption, reportedly, when he was 6 years old, and he was raised by a white couple out in Los Angeles. That white couple who raised him was forbidden to go to the funeral or be involved in any of the matters. So what you see is the family is somebody who put him up for adoption. Now,
interesting.
That is why Memphis, those allegations
Okay.
Now, that's why Memphis did not explode like anywhere else, because everybody involved has a connection with the streets. And
Right.
what happens is the street word was, hey, this ain't nothing to go get in trouble behind. It's just somebody having some problems domestically. 4 way. Five, well, 1, 2, 6, 7 ways.
All right, I want to go to Mr. Engagement and then Arnessa and anybody else that want to come up, please do so. And it's one more topic of the Black Florida town. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Mr. Engagement.
yeah. I just wanted to be brief. Mr. Judge Joe Brown, and Dana, are, are you guys, when they up in the pay of these cops, are they up in the criteria as the educational standard and stuff of that nature as well?
No,
Because if
they're
you,
not. No, they're
they
not.
should, they
They
should.
should, but they can't even get anybody right now. Right now, technically, you're supposed to have a 4-year college degree, or at least the equivalent. All right. You're supposed to pass a battery of psychological tests, and you're supposed to get training in a classroom as well as physical training. It takes several months, but they have cut out a lot of the training that's supposed to go in the classroom, like, for example, quote, the use of force, unquote, and what the law is. So that's supposed to be done in the squad car, but you can't guarantee that the person that's trying to teach a new recruit in the squad car even grasp at him or herself. Now, that has gotten absolutely ridiculous. It's just that for the last 8 years, starting before that, 4 years before that, people let the police department get out of control. In other words, nobody was in charge and nobody was backed up, and the mayor did not get on behind when somebody got out of hand. Now, we had, interestingly enough, Dr. W. Harrington, who got elected in 1991. He actually had an unusual background. He was a very large person. And when he fought Golden Gloves, he was undefeated Golden Gloves heavyweight champion. He decided he wanted to do something else and got a PhD and was in education. And he was known literally for snatching somebody by the collar and ramming him up against the wall. So he had a thing with the director of police where he fired 7 of them in less than a year because they couldn't get a handle on the way to police department. 6 or 7 within a year because they couldn't get a handle on getting the police department under control. He did. And I was surprised one time when I was driving through the hood and I saw a couple of old ladies that I knew, and I stopped to speak with them, and they had trays of donuts and several thermoses of coffee on this portable table. And I asked them what they were doing, and they were saying they wanted to treat the patrolmen in the area with coffee and donuts and appreciation for the fine job they were doing. I remember when the police department got in trouble with the city council because the police were refusing to cite people for minor equipment violations. The police said these citizens have to get to work. These are minor violations. They're not a public hazard. It will cost them hundreds of dollars if we write them a ticket, and they need that money because they are having economic problems, which they were at the time. So the city council threatened to cut their pay if they didn't start writing tickets. So they just started setting up roadblocks with 10, 15 squad cars and pulling 30 cars over and issuing a lot of road uh, hazard or equipment hazard tickets, which never did get collected, but wound up in people getting suspended driving privileges and cost a lot of money and created havoc. But you see, the police can be functional, they can be a unit where the population approves of what they do, but you have to have somebody in authority under, well, able to exercise control. And the mayor after him didn't. And the mayor after him, who is in office now, but turned out is just a general incompetent. And another thing, too, whereas the mayor who had control of the police, he's in his 80s now, and I know him, I used to represent him. But the difference, you have nobody running for the office now who will accept my challenge. You know what my challenge is? I dare you to go walk in some of the neighborhoods I'll walk in without an armed escort and get out alive, or without your ass getting kicked. Let's go.
Ernessa?
Unmute.
Ernessa? Yeah, unmute. Can she hear us? Anybody else want to speak? If not, I want to go to the Black Florida town fights for a right to use prime land. Ernessa, you requested to speak. Just unmute. So, okay, so Florida, it says, what is this? NY Notaria, a third generation resident of Eatonville and leader of an organization to preserve the Florida community, believes that the outcome of the battle for the 100 acres will determine whether it survives. A Black town in Central Florida is fighting for the right to use prime land they believe is crucial for its survival. Joe Clark, who eventually became a mayor of Eatonville, helped found the settlement in 1887 once Black people were allowed to purchase plots of land following the Civil War. According to CBS News, at a time when white landowners still refused to sell to African Americans, Clark managed to persuade two white Northerners to make plots available for purchase, thus forming one of the first Black towns to incorporate. There was a lot of resistance from the surrounding communities, said the landscape architect, because if they could incorporate, that meant that they could vote. They could have their own law enforcement. They could manage their own business. Today, Eatonville has only one store, a Family Dollar, and a median yearly income of about $27,000. The town lacks a supermarket, gas station, pharmacy, and other vital businesses, yet it is not without its history. The town is home to the Czar Neil Hurston Museum, and before COVID-19 pandemic, a preservation group led by third generation resident New York NY Natara hosted an annual festival in honor of the late author, Eatonville's most famous native daughter, that regularly drew more than 50,000 visitors. Real quick, while the town is unique for its connections to Hurston, citizens hope to use a 100-acre parcel to its advantage. The land, located 10 minutes from the downtown Orlando and 30 minutes from Disney World, was worth more than $20 million in 2019. Natari, and I'm probably saying his last name wrong, Nathiri, believes the outcome of the battle for the territory, formerly a portion of 300-acre complex that took up about 40% of Eatonville, will determine whether the town survives, right? So unidentified developer, okay, so this is it. An unidentified developer is set to purchase the final 100 acres from the Orange County Public School System for $14 million on March 31st, a significant discount from the property's most recent assessment value. Last month, the town council met to decide an amendment to open the door for a new district of more than 350 houses and apartments. So, attorney for the developer claimed the project would offer shopping, dining, entertainment options. So basically, this is a historically Black town, Eatonville, and now they have a bulk of land, 100 acres up for sale, and of course, these wealthy developer companies come in, buy it up, and then they bring in housing, most likely expensive, entertainment. And it takes away, I guess you could say, the historical aspect of the town. instead of reinvesting in the people that originally were living there, they get pushed out. And you're talking about 30 minutes from Disney World. So that is a prime location. And two things I want to highlight. So I want you to speak to this judge, and also, why is it that we don't have laws passed like Native Americans do to preserve certain sacred land that was started and founded, for Black people in a time where we couldn't own anything?
Easy enough on that one. Article 6 of the Constitution says one of the three things that are part of the supreme law of the land are those treaties that have been ratified by the Senate. And there are treaties with the Indian nations or Native American nations. And that's where those things come in. We never were a nation, and we have no treaties as a sovereign entity with the United States as a sovereign entity. Now, you will note that many a paleface got scalped. The 7th Cavalry and Colonel, previously acting brevetted General George Armstrong Custer, got wiped out at the Bighorn River. And there was what the War Department lists as, quote, the Colored Wars, unquote, now known as the Seminole Indian Wars, wherein it was kind of a draw. And there were a couple of hundred years worth of frontier colonial history fighting Native Americans. And the Native Americans took scalps and nailed them to lodge poles and laughed about it instead of complaining about how they were victimized. So it makes a difference.
It does. I agree with you on that. But also, I also think too, a lot of times what happened with Black communities, Black towns, Black cities, or what have you, throughout the decades, public policies were created specifically to squeeze out Black people, squeeze out our communities. And that is true. That is a fact, and that is exactly what this is a prime example of what has actually happened now. Because public policies can make or break a community and a specific group of people. And it's been a long time since we had anything specifically for Black Americans that helps uplift our group, because the government has helped every group, including white men and white women, but every group here in America except for us. Now, we do need.
Wait. Let me stop you. Let me stop you. We have representatives who ought to take care of that. So what do we need special treatment for? Oh, our representatives don't represent us. They represent somebody else. They just
Right.
get elected. That's our fault for electing the bastards. We shouldn't put them in office.
Right.
What,
I mean, it has to start with us.
If you want to look at something, look over the last 30 some years, 35 years, and find something that the Black Caucus has done for the Black people they supposedly represent.
Mm-hmm.
But look what they have backed up, introduced, and lobbied to support that have nothing to do with the people who elect them.
Right. And then my question also is just especially for this situation in Florida, where is the support of the Congressional Black Caucus? Just real quick, I just want to finish this part up in this article. It says the council members believe Eatonville development would erase what's left of actual Eatonville. The developer may still purchase the property and begin construction, provided it aligns with Eatonville's plan for the town's continued existence. And the Orange County Public School System plans to move forward with the sale Eatonville residents might respond with a lawsuit. Eatonville resident Julian Johnson believes that Orange County Public Schools should give them the property as a form of restitution. This is an economic justice that we're fighting for, Johnson said. Land is economic justice. It's about demanding it back. You've done the people wrong over and over. So,
well, let me ask a question. Does anybody claim property rights in the land right now?
I don't think so.
Not just laying fallow a large tract of land with nobody claiming ownership of the property rights.
Well, maybe they don't have money to claim it.
Well, that's not what I'm saying. In a place like Florida, it's not public land.
Okay.
Is it? So there's this little constitutional principle: no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, nor property without due process of law. So what are they advocating? Exercising eminent domain and taking somebody's property and then compensating them for the loss of use of the property that the taxpayers will have to pay. So the problem is it's a rob Peter to pay Paul thing. In other words, who's getting their property interest extinguished to favor somebody else getting those same property interest?
Mm-hmm. So then what should the Black people of Eatonville do? What should Black people nationally do? What should the politicians, Congressional Black Caucus be doing? Shouldn't we have some type of preservation of our history here, of our land, of our community?
Well, anybody introduced anything, any proposed action to see to that? Answer: no. How about where you have a situation like in Memphis, where 70-some% of the population is Black, and only 19.1% of the registered voters are, but the predominantly Black city council is trying to give away all of the interest that the people do have in various and sundry properties and aspects of this city, and for crumbs under the table to them, not them being the people, but the politicians, giving away the assets that belong to the people: white, Black, brown, red, and yellow.
I want to go to Mr. Engagement, and anybody else in this room, you want to request to come up, do so now, because if not, we're going to end it soon. But if you want to request to comment on everything we talked about Donald Trump, we talked about what's going on in France. People asked questions about other things, and of course, we talked about Memphis. And I want you guys to support Judge Joe Brown for mayor. You can donate to his Cash App, $ Judge Joe Brown 2023, $ Judge Joe Brown 2023, Cash App, $ Judge Joe Brown 2023. And then his campaign website is jjb2023.com. So if you want to request, please do so now. And go ahead, Mr. Engagement, you have the floor.
Yeah, that's interesting that people are bringing up history. Like, this is the reason why I did create a lineage-based type of society or club to address our historical grievances and such, like when it comes to how our education is being taught and stuff of that nature to influence policy. Because I've been seeing how we've been disenfranchised in that conversation because we're dependent on like the NAACP or the Urban League, and they're not really interested in preserving our history per se, from what I observe. Or they don't see the value in that. So that was just my take on it. I do hear that, and I do see that that's a major concern. And us not having, until like fairly recent, not having a historical society, I think is very, very important for the growth of our community as just Negro American people. We need to have access to our own set of knowledge that's separate away from the dominant society, that can't be influenced and it can't be altered or changed. Every other cultural group has a historical society, like the Italian people, the French people, Jewish people, etc. I just want to see more Negroes or more Black American people, however they want to define themselves, like fight for our history and fight to preserve our history because it's very important because our ancestors did a lot on this land. So that's just my take on it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Somebody tried to come up and the connection didn't go through. So again, if you want to request to come up, the floor is open. Ask the judge whatever, comment on whatever we talked about. You have any questions for Judge Joe Brown, please do so. If not, we could start closing it out. Did you want to respond to what Mr. Engagement said, Judge, or do you have anything else you want to add?
Res ipsa loquitur. It speaks for itself.
I don't understand that.
In other words, what he said speaks for itself. It needs no comment.
Right. All right. Well, I don't see any more requests. I think this was a very productive space. So I do see a request. Who is this? Okay. Oh, 1 second. Tupac. Yeah. Even people who did come up, you could come back up. So I just want everyone to be able to ask questions, comment, or whatever. Go ahead, Tupac. Tupac, you're unmuted, but we don't hear anything.
Oh, it just took a little while for it to connect. My apologies. I just wanted to say thank you for hosting the space, and thank you, Judge, for being here. I love listening to you in spaces. Good luck with your campaign and everything you're doing. I do spaces on academia and spirituality and how those things can possibly mix. Sounds like a topic you might be interested in. If you're ever around in spaces and you see me in there, please pop in and say what's up. We'd love to have you on sometime. Dana, I'll be listening to you forever. I got my notifications on for your spaces, and thank you again for putting this on.
Yeah, thank you. I just followed you back. I like that. You said spirituality and academia. That's very interesting. So I just followed you. So I'll be hopping in your spaces as well. I see Heat trying to connect, and anybody else that want to come up, just go ahead and speak, Mr. Engagement. I see your hand.
I'm gonna say Judge Joe Brown, and I'm gonna say thank you and Dana for always being consecutive or being always on time and always having a space for us Negro and Black people to discuss things that are very pertinent to us. I think that's very important to have these type of spaces and to have these type of discussions, especially with mentors or people that are experienced in life and livelihood and manhood and womanhood. So like those things is very, very important because our society as a whole is lacking that. And seeing good examples of that is always a good thing. And having good conversation about what we can do to help improve our community is always a very, very great conversation to have.
Thank you, young man. Appreciate that.
Don't judge him, Joe Brown.